This is the writing game. I'm Gregory Palaci. Fetch quests are the bane of any gamer. If you're old enough, then each and every time you're presented with one, you do it begrudgingly, swearing at the designers who were so lazy. If you're young enough for it not to matter, it soon will. You'll be asking yourself why the NPCs couldn't collect their own damn wolf skins or pixie waddles. Sad to say, it's just one of those things. But it doesn't have to be. Our stories come from our lives and from the playwright's pen. The mind of the actor, the roles we create, the artistry of life itself, and the quest for peace. Maya Angelou. So you're probably wondering what's wrong with fetch quests, aside from the fact that they're boring. Truth be told, nothing's wrong with them. Fetch quests are as good as any other quests. To get reductive, all quests are about one thing: change. If you're on a quest, you're either seeking something, a person, a place, a thing, or information. Basically, a noun. Why? Because you don't have it. You're, in effect, fetching something. Alternatively, you do have it and are seeking something else. You want something different. In either case, you're after change. What makes fetch quests so boring is that the change you're after is not for you. Those 10 wolf skins, or pixie waddles, could be tied to an epic saga where the quest giver is using them as a disguise to sneak their way into the realm of the gods in an effort to steal a golden urn. You'll just never know about it because you're not involved in that story, beyond, of course, running an errand. You, as a player and a character, are left on the side like so many NPCs. Which begs the question, why have the quest in the first place? It's hardly emblematic of the power fantasy a player is participating in, unless it's to show humanity's dominance over nature as you beat it over the head for the umpteenth time. More often than not, it's because the player character is at low level, or the game is one that doesn't let the world change. Think any MMO, EverQuest, Anarchy Online, World of Warcraft, The Division, or Destiny 2. To be fair to those games and their creators, most RPGs have the bad habit of doling out quests that result in no changes to the world. It doesn't matter if an NPC sends you seeking badger pelts or bugbears who stole their favorite pug. That NPC will still be standing there whether you complete the quest or not. They're just always standing there. Of course, some games have their NPCs on schedules, so they're not always literally standing in the same spot, but similar to Westworld, the NPCs will soon return to their starting positions. The major exception to this, I'm sure you can guess, is The Witcher 3. Of EVE Online as well, but we're not going to talk about EVE Online. So, The Witcher 3, where killing of a creature has a noticeable impact on the world. You can clear out a monster nest or rid the countryside of a particularly burdensome beast, and the people will return. But Geralt has a very good reason for taking on such fetch quests on a regular basis. It's his job. Hunting monsters pays. And as a player, we can gain experience and special loot. That loot, be it 10 wolfskins or a unicorn horn, serves another purpose in the game beyond being sellable. It's crafting components, or for potions, arms, and armor. So even if there isn't an NPC that wants the results of the quest, the player can make use of them. Those are mechanics, and as a writer, you never know what will make the cut. Between the time you've written something and the game ships, entire systems that are justified by your story can be stripped. But that's why it's important for the story to justify the decisions to have certain types of quests, irregardless of whether there are additional mechanics to support them. By that, I mean the player character needs a reason to take on such quests, to gather items for others beyond the grind. Geralt has a job as a witcher. Mario may be a plumber, but he isn't laying pipe. So, if you're going to have fetch quests, what can we as writers do to make them more palatable? Given there's no guarantee certain systems will be in the game. Aside from having the player character have a profession that makes searching for such materials relevant, we can write more. Not more fetch quests, but more steps and aspects to the quest. The hunt for wolfskins can be a front for something else. The NPC who gave you the quest may have ulterior motives for killing all those wolves. Or someone else doesn't want you to kill those wolves, putting you in the middle of a conflict between two parties. Fetch quests, like any quest, are a framing device for the reality of the world the player character inhabits. And because you, as a writer, create it all, there's no reason to leave it all at just return when you've collected 6 platypus bills. That is, unless what you're creating is not actually a quest, but a mission, job, or duty. We all have our responsibilities, be they to our home or profession, so why shouldn't video game characters? We take out the trash, go grocery shopping, turn in TPS reports, and does any of it say anything about us as people? Do we change by doing it? Only if your life is a postmodern novel, and even then, there's a distinct lack of self-referential analysis. Jobs offer the perfect reason for repeating tasks, because they are by nature repetitive. Even creative professions like writing, painting, or performing have a litany of actions. It's called practice or preparation, and you never stop doing it. Or, as a writer, editing. After all, editing is iteration. Professions common to video games, like soldiers or police officers, have a lot of routines. Going on patrol, for example, guard duty, trainings, and briefings. None of it sounds terribly exciting, and most of the time, it's not. Of course, as we know, things can get crazy, but it's that mundanity of the everyday that video games tend to ignore, unless, of course, you're playing Shenmue 3. And the obvious exception of farming or transportation sims. When it comes to being a soldier or police officer, more often than not, you don't play the loneliest grunt. The exception to that, of course, is the Arma series, but its focus on simulation and not arcade-style action. That said, who has time for a job when they're saving the world? That's honestly why we see people who inhabit special positions in games. Special forces soldiers, spies, superheroes, bounty hunters, outcasts, exiles, explorers, smugglers, and more. Basically, anyone who has the ability to cross lines and make decisions is a great choice for a protagonist. Because they once again are the epitome of a power fantasy. They have an agency over their lives and their world that most of us do not. That's why you'll never see Master Chief picking flowers as he attempts to save the universe. In fact, I'm thrown out of the fantasy I'm supposed to inhabit as a particular character anytime there's collecting and crafting. Seriously, why should I, as an all-powerful badass, have to do such menial work? Dragon Age Inquisition, I'm looking at you. You have me quite literally running a country, and yet I still have to find my own raw materials and then forge armor? There's the most qualified dwarf sitting in the bowels of my castle, and she can't do it for me. She has to just sit there and watch and comment. Hunting and gathering, along with crafting, can fit a world and a character that's based around being self-sufficient. Think the Fallout series. But in most cases, the systems that gamers want don't fit the story, or even the power fantasy all that well. Think of any time you're playing an RTS and you're a general commanding divisions, legions, etc., but then you're going down to squad level and individual soldiers. Is that the reality of how it works? No. There's a thing called a chain of command. If a character is a part of a system, be it a military order, a secret society, or otherwise, or even a family, there's always a certain amount that is done by others. Humans and other creatures are social animals. Hell, half the creatures we kill in video games are social creatures. So there are going to be mechanisms within those groups for hunting, gathering, crafting, and sharing of resources. I know it sounds like I'm off on some anti-libertarian tirade, but I'm not. No man, elf, super soldier, or sim is an island. The real exception for video game characters is whomever you play in Minecraft. There's no support system. There are no other characters. You're on your own, so it's all on you to create something. But then that's a game without a plot to concern yourself with as a writer. Enough about crafting. Back to quests. Every quest is about change, whether it's reactive or active. If you're holding to the hero's journey, then every quest is reactive, because something else has changed that prompts the character to go on the quest. But if you're not concerned with the hero's journey, then the difference between a reactive and an active quest is whether or not someone or something forces the character on him. An active choice. An active quest would have the character looking around at the state of the world and wanting to change it. They don't necessarily have to have something happen to them to make that occur, which is contrary to the idea put forward by comic books and how they work. But hey, I don't think you need an inciting incident to do good. Reactive quest is something a character is forced onto, like revenge, or attempting to revert the world back to a previous state, similar to Lord of the Rings. Quests, reactive and active alike, aren't always one or the other. Any ensemble is likely to have characters that go on the quest as a reaction, while others choose it actively. Take the original Star Wars trilogy, for example. All the guys are reactive. Princess Leia is the only active character as she chooses to fight the Empire. Luke, Han, Chewie, and Obi-Wan are all forced into the fight. Hell, Princess Leia takes charge the moment she's rescued and comes out shooting. She doesn't need to. She wants to. She chooses to. So what's meant to change from a quest? Two things. The character and the world. It doesn't have to be both, but for the power fantasy to be present, then the world at least has to change. Not every quest has to be dramatic in its change, merely incremental in a way the player feels as if they're accomplishing something. But if you listen to my last episode, Try Fail Cycles, then you know that's not always the smartest thing to do. Sometimes quests need to fail, or result in failure, to give both the character and the player a chance to learn and reassess, as well as to heighten the odds they're playing for. For a character to change, they need an arc. Any quest they take that affects them and changes them is going to provide that arc. But we'll explore character arcs more in a future episode. For now, it's just worth thinking about how a quest can change a character. Take Geralt's quest with a cast iron pan in The Witcher 3. Does he change from it? Yes, he can, though only if the player uses that opportunity to have him become either more charitable in his actions or more wary of the jobs he takes on. Hunting down missing cookware isn't exactly his prime motive, yet this is an opportunity for the player to reflect on how they play and the role they want Geralt to take in the world. It's also a super simple fetch quest. Quests are always going to be relative for the characters. That relationship in turn affects players, who are going to perceive a certain value for that quest. And I'm not talking about the rewards they receive for the time it takes to complete. Rather, was it worth it? Back in EverQuest, there was a lot of grinding fetch quests to complete. It's not just the nature of MMOs, but any game where you have to raise your position within a faction. At the time, I considered it worth it, but I was young and focused more on other aspects of the game. Now, I want more from my quests. I don't expect all of them to be perfect or life-changing for the character I'm inhabiting, but I do expect them to serve a purpose within the story and plot of the game. One final thought on quests, and since I haven't mentioned it this episode, Firewatch has the anti-fetch quest. Hear me out. Firewatch has you as Henry at one point searching a campsite with the option to pick up the cans. Some of the stuff you pick up serves the purpose of moving the dialogue forward and advancing the plot. However, you don't actually have to collect the cans. There's no reward, there's no achievement, there's no little ding or check mark to show that you've collected all the cans you find throughout the game or even that campsite. What there is role-playing. Feeling like you're Henry doing your job of maintaining the Wyoming wilderness and watching for wildfires. And that's its own reward. Thanks for taking part in this episode of The Writing Game. I'm Gregory Placi. Everything I do can be found at onegamedad.com, and I can be reached there or on Twitter at onegamedad. Please contact me if you want to talk writing, games, this show, or even working together. I'd love to write your game. The Writing Game is hosted by Third Culture Kids, which can be found at thirdculturekids.net, where the full transcript of this episode is available. Please be sure to like and subscribe or rate and review this show on whatever platform you find it. And of course, share it if you care to. Any feedback is always welcome. I'll see you on the next episode.